All right, so next up on the agenda is step 12. Who's excited about talking about this? I need y'all to get loud. Get amped up. There you go. Right? This is the fun part. This is the cool stuff. And until you've had that experience, it's sometimes a little bit difficult to understand how helping others can be the most exciting part of your life. I had a sponsor that when I got sober and I called her, and I think I might have called her too much, and she said, when you call me, it's the bright spot of my day. And I thought, well, you don't have enough going on in your life. If me calling you, little old me calling you is the bright spot, until I started to sponsor others and take people through the work and really got to find the joy in it. It's sort of the secret handshake of AA. In talking about this stuff, I think the reason that some of us don't end up doing it is because we're in fear of it. We don't know what to say. We don't know how to sponsor. We don't know how to take a meeting into a facility. And the good news is that the answers are in the book. And we forget that we've just now tapped into a power that's going to give us precise direction. When my spirit is aligned with the will of God, He's moving me in places, and I can hear things that I wouldn't ordinarily hear. I feel moved to do things that I wouldn't ordinarily feel moved to do. And so I have to remember that the power does not come from me anyway. So I don't have to have all the answers. They're going to be provided for me. Steps 4 through 9 are designed to take care of the past, right? So that I can be present in steps 10, 11, and 12. So 10 is about a consistent spot check. Where am I? What's my current reality? Where am I currently sitting with God? What's standing in my way? What business do I need to handle? And it gives me the opportunity to start each day fresh, each day new as I move through this process. Step 11 is, sometimes looked at as something to check off a list. Okay, I did my AM prayer meditation, check. I did my nightly review, check. And what I forget is that this is a living, breathing communication relationship I'm having with the power of God. It's very real, it's very necessary, but it's also very exciting. And just like any relationship, communication is key. Right? Prayer is talking, meditation is listening. My heart begins to be inspired by things that I didn't even know were possible. And sometimes we get caught up in the meditation. Most of us have heard of prayer or have experienced prayer. It's not necessarily a new concept, but sometimes we get a little bogged down with meditation. And how is this going to work? And what does it have to look like? And Margareta did a great job talking about a personal relationship with God. Some of us are going to sit on the floor in the lotus position with music in the background, and that's how we're going to meditate. Nothing wrong with it. Some of us are going to be on our knees. Some of us are going to be in bed. Some of you are sitting outside feeling nature. I mean, whatever it is that you do, just do it. My concept of God today is not what it was 10 years ago, because we're in relationship, and it's growing and it's evolving. I remember sitting in treatment, and Chris, somebody that many of you know from past workshops, said, I have an amazing relationship with God. It's so cool, and you can't have it. And I didn't understand initially. I was like, well, that's not nice. You can't have it. And what I didn't understand at the time was he meant it's so personal, and it's so special to him because it's his relationship, right? I get to have my own concept of God, and I get to have my own communication with the one I call God. And that's part of the blessing of this program, is that it doesn't have to look like everybody else. Some of you meditate for 15 minutes. Some of you meditate for 2 hours. My hats are off to you. I'm not that disciplined. Right? But whatever it needs to look like, that's what it's going to look like. So when I'm in this constant relationship with Him, and He's given me the direction to go out and help others, there's a guideline. There's a whole chapter. I had a guy sit down with me one time, and he said, well, I just don't know how to work with others. And I went, Chapter 7, working with others. This is the cool stuff. I don't have to figure it out on my own. I've also got a sponsor who has a lot of knowledge and experience as well. Lean into these people that know how to do this. In step 12 in chapter 7, they lead off with the most practical experience that they have. It says practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It's pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? Didn't say practical experience shows us nothing secures my sobriety like sitting in meetings. No, that's not what it said. That was a news flash to me. I thought AA was the meeting. The meeting is the gathering place to learn this text so I can carry it out, so I can work with others. I didn't know that. I didn't know a whole lot. Still didn't. Still don't. It says it works when other activities fail, and we sure do try those, don't we? I need to feel a little better. I need to knock the edge off, and I start doing all these other things until I really realize that giving rather than getting has got to be my guiding principle. The book talks explicitly about this. There's a whole attitude shift that must take place. Otherwise, I go back to doing what I know works, which is drinking. It says, carry this message to other alcoholics. Not my message. Not Thomas's version. Not Margareta's theory. But this message contained in this text, which denotes that I've read the book, that I've studied it, that I know what's in here. You can help when no one else can. Have you ever sat across the table from somebody who knew nothing about alcoholism, explained it to them, and watched the lights come on? Mm-hmm. There is nothing like that experience. Somebody that's been talked at their entire life by very well-meaning people, might I add, who want to help them, but have no idea what it's like to wake up in the morning, desperately not want to take a drink, and know for certain you'll be loaded by nightfall. That's a true alcoholic experience, to drink against your own will. And when I can explain from the text and from my personal experience the disease of alcoholism, and I can make a connection with you, it's amazing. Again, Bill writes about it a lot and calls it the language of the heart. There's an understanding like no other. My mom is a breast cancer survivor, as is my stepmother. And to listen to them talk with other people who have also survived cancer, it's an instant connection. It's a connection that I can't have. I can theoretically understand it, but I cannot make that connection with them. It's the same that you see in these rooms. When one recovered person sits down with a dying newcomer, there's nothing better. It says, you can secure their confidence where others fail. Remember, they are very ill. Right? And then we look at the 12-step promises. It says, life will take on new meaning. I hear John say a lot, life will take on a meaning. Some of you may have been serving lots of purposes. I, however, drank alone in the garage for a long time. So life took on a brand new meaning for me when I learned to help others. It says to watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. Wow. Wow. That's a lot different than what I came here for. I came here because I didn't want to die with a bottle in my hand. The end. I had no idea that what I could find was a brand new life, a brand new sense of purpose. And how many of you were begging for that to happen while you were drinking? God, just let me feel useful. Just let me have a purpose. Let me have some meaning in my life. I'm searching everything from Dr. Phil to yoga to health clubs to meditation to church. Nothing wrong with any of those things. But it didn't spell the necessary vital spiritual experience needed to overcome alcoholism and give me a sense of purpose to help others. Right? So I got what I was asking. They write in here a little bit about what to do when you don't know where any drinkers are. Today, we know where they are. They're in treatment centers, they're in detoxes, they're in jails, right? They're all over the place. It says you can easily find some by asking a few doctors, ministers, priests, or hospitals. So I see a lot of people that come into Dallas to get sober. They come there for treatment, or they come here to stay with a family member, and then they're going back to wherever they live, and they'll say, there's not really any AA groups where I live, or there's not any places where I know of where alcoholics are. And what I encourage them to do is what the big book tells them, go and find them. They're out there. You can go to the hospital. I've told many people, you can go to the hospital and tell them, here's my name, here's my number. I'm willing to come here anytime and speak to anyone. I get involved with the judicial system. I tell everybody from my dentist to the therapist that I am in recovery, to the point that people go, we get it. Crank it down. I think I talked about it yesterday, or I may have, that the human resources department at the hotel that I worked for, I sat them down and told them, I'm in recovery, here's what I do, and my boss pulled me aside and said, stop telling everybody that you're an alcoholic. I don't care, because everybody needs to know who I am and what I am. If there's an opportunity that I could be helpful, you need to know, right? So there's nothing for me to feel ashamed about. And so when I hear people say that in early recovery, well, I don't want everybody to know, what I'll say to you is that will change. I understand those feelings. I understand that guilt and I understand that shame, however. The more I do this work, the more I see that my past is my greatest asset. It's something to live for, not to hide in a closet. Make sense? All right. It also talks about how to work with these places. We were kind of talking last night at dinner about going into institutions and carrying the message, which means taking a meeting in there, carrying the message from the book to the people that are in treatment or in hospitals. And what it's going to warn me of is to be cooperative and not to criticize them. We oftentimes don't agree with the way people do things in any area of our life, let's be honest. Right? We often have a big opinion about what everybody else is doing. And when I'm invited into a facility to work with people, what the people in the facility are doing is not my business. I'm a guest in that facility, and when I'm there, I'm to only talk about the literature. What other programs they're doing, what other literature they're reading is not my concern. I'm just going to talk about this stuff. It says to be helpful is our only aim. So it's good to remember that kind of stuff. And sitting down with somebody, and you may come across alcoholics from family members, from friends. There'd be all kinds of people in your life that will recommend you as somebody who's recovered. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to sit down and ask the questions. We're going to let them talk and we're going to ask some questions. We're going to qualify and see, is this gentleman or is this lady a real alcoholic? Are they in the beginning, the end stages of alcoholism? And more importantly, are they wanting to stop? Oftentimes when we're contacted by family members, my experience is the family is ready for them to stop drinking. The alcoholic is not done a lot of times. And that's okay, because it's another opportunity for me to be helpful to family members. If you don't know about Al-Anon, get to know about Al-Anon. You may not feel that you need it, but somebody you sponsor's family is going to need it, possibly. So you might, if you know anybody in Al-Anon, you might pull them aside and say, can I have your name and number for family members that I run across so that I can connect you guys? Because I got to tell you, watching the Al-Anon people sync up is just like watching a bunch of drunks do it. It's the funniest thing you'll ever see. Oh, your person does this and my person does that and I feel this way and you feel that way, and all of a sudden there's a common bond, and they need that as well. Then they get to be helpful to one another. So it's going to tell us on the top of page 90, if he doesn't want to stop drinking, don't waste your time trying to persuade him. Who's been guilty of that besides me? I'm going to take hostages into recovery. You know, I don't do that anymore. I stay very far away from it. But we get so excited when we recover that we want everybody to have it. And I've been known to try to chase them down at the 24-Hour Club in Dallas, Texas, which is a little wind-up place that you can come in off the street and sleep. And you pay by the week, and there's food there and meetings all the time. And I was trying to sponsor a girl who really did not want to do the work. And she hadn't called me, shocker. And she's not interested in what I had to offer. And I told my sponsor, okay, when the meeting's done, I'm going down to the 24-Hour Club and I'm going to talk to her. And she said, for what? And that's because I'm sponsoring her and she's not calling me and she's not doing this work and I'm going to talk to her about it. And she said, no, you're not. You're not. Leave her alone. And I thought, well, it's my duty. It's my responsibility. Audrey, they're not asking for help. When they don't want help, leave them alone. It was one of the hardest lessons I learned in carrying the message, was to not drag them by their hair inside the room. This is not Amway. You don't get points for bringing anybody in. It's okay. It's all right. And if I could take a lesson from what they're doing back in the 30s, if you didn't want to do this, they very lovingly said, goodbye. Let us know when you're ready. We'll be right here. They didn't try to convince you, because what the book tells me is alcohol is the great persuader. Not Audrey. I will never convince you to get sober, just like you couldn't convince me to get sober. It's funny how you get amnesia in early sobriety. You know what I mean? And God forbid it be one of your family members, because I'm going to get my people sober. Anybody else do that? parents, siblings. I tried to drag everybody under the bus. Nobody came, but I did my best. But it's giving me some questions to ask on page 90. Down at the bottom it says, let his family or friend ask him if he wants to quit for good and if he go to any extreme to do so. Right? Because most of us have to get to a spot where we're backed into a corner with zero options. If I think I have even a slight option, I'll play the card. I'll take it because I'm trying to do it my way still. And it says if he doesn't want to see you, never force yourself upon him. I should have highlighted that. Placed it on my bathroom mirror. And then it's going to tell me, neither should the family hysterically plead with him to do anything. Anybody in here the product of an intervention? Oh, that's good times. Me too. Yeah. Hey, just food for thought. Nor should they tell him much about you. I can't plead emotionally with these people. And it goes back to what they talk about in the doctor's opinion. I find this to be so true. It says, frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. True or false? It's true, right? I can plead with you emotionally, and it's going to make you do a couple things. It'll make you feel guilty. It'll scare you. It'll shame you. It'll never keep you out of the bar. It'll never keep you from going to the liquor store. Who in here's got kids? Children. A whole bunch of you. Do you love your kids? Yes. You're damn right you do. And if you could have quit drinking for them, would you have done so a long time ago? Absolutely. Right? That kind of stuff doesn't work for people like us. We're beyond human aid. The love of a child, the love of a parent, the threat of a consequence will never be enough. So when I'm sponsoring people, when I'm attempting to carry a message to them, those are not viable tools for me any longer. I cannot plead with you on an emotional level to the point that gets you to do what I need you to do. It says they should wait for the end of his next drinking bout. Is that hard to do? Yeah, but I've got to get my hands off of it. Guess who it's really hard to do that with? The family. Because they want you to fix it right now. Because they've invited you into their home and they need you to handle it. This is another point in which I get them connected with family members of people who have recovered. Right? So that they've got somebody that they understand. But I'm going to explain the disease of alcoholism to the family as well, if I'm given that opportunity. But I've got to see that it took a long time for somebody to really sink this in with me. But he said to deprive an alcoholic of his last drink or her last drink was the most selfish thing I could do. That's when it began to click with me. I needed every drop I needed. So do they. So I'm going to give them the grace that they need. When I have this conversation, flip over to page 92 with me if you will. When I sit down and have this conversation with the prospect, essentially, it tells me that I can speak about my own experience. One-on-one with another newcomer is a appropriate place for me to tell some of my story. That's where some of our war stories are appropriate, where we can match up and identify. Inside the meeting is not the place for it. Right? That's where we're to talk about the solution. But when there's an identification necessary, that's when I can do it. It says, give him an account of the struggles you made to stop. Show him the mental twist which leads to the first drink of a spree. I can take him through the chapters more about alcoholism. I can speak from my own experience, just make sure he understands. It says if he's an alcoholic, he'll understand you at once. Have you had that experience? Somebody, you're reading with them, you're talking to them, and their head is just bobbing the whole time. Right? And it says, if you're satisfied he's a real alcoholic, begin to dwell on the hopeless feature of the malady. That goes against some of our nature. Right? I remember a friend of mine who carried the message into a treatment center in Dallas. They told her, you're just a Debbie Downer. You're just you're negative, and you're not very cheerful. And, they wanted her to go in there and say, it's going to be okay, and we're going to do this together, and all will be well. And she said, I'm not going to lie to them. Alcoholism is deadly. I'm not here to be your cheerleader. I'm here to give you the facts. And I respect that, right? And it's real funny at the meeting that I do on Sunday nights in Dallas. We talk about steps 1, 2, and 3, and primarily step 1 for the majority of the meeting. We do it every week. Every once in a while you see the patients go, they just zone out. And I laugh, because they want us to get off of step 1. We're not going to. Because if you don't understand your problem, nothing else I say makes sense. It doesn't matter anyway. So we're going to stay on this until you get it. And if you don't, then that's my problem. Right? They all want to talk about the happy-go-lucky stuff. No, that's later. Right now we're talking about the deadliness of alcoholism. Right? I've got to identify and know this stuff. And they talk about how to, I love this. Michael says this a lot. And I used to think he was so dramatic when he would share this in the meetings. But he said the big book is written in blood. And I thought, that's super drastic, Michael, calm down. But over the years, I began to understand this. This is written based upon what will work and a majority of what won't work. How many mistakes do you think these guys made in order to get all this information and compile it to the book? How many bodies did they step over with people not doing this work? A ton. Right? So it's experience that I can learn from. So it lets me know what to do and what not to do. You read Fred's story when they came to visit him and they laid out alcoholism, and what did he say? Well, that's good for y'all. I concede I have some of these symptoms, but I'm a long way from being as bad as you guys. I appreciate the information. Right? I love the arrogance of an alcoholic. I appreciate you. Thanks. Right? I'm all set though. I don't need you. Did they stay and plead with him? No. They said they left him with a notion that we ought to leave every newcomer with. Right? If you are a real alcoholic, the time and place will come where you will drink again, regardless. And if you read Fred's story, he drinks at a time in which nobody expects him to, which I love. I love, because you visit these patients in the treatment center and they're all waiting on the drama, on something bad to happen. If I can just arrange my life so that all is okay, I won't drink. And that's where we play the little game with them. Who drinks on a good day? Margareta did this. Who drinks on a good day? Who drinks on a bad day? Who drinks when it's sunshine and when it's raining? We go through every circumstance until they understand an alcoholic drinks no matter what. Fred drank at the end of a perfect day. Not a cloud on the horizon. I mean, does it get any better than that? I don't think so. The end of a perfect day, no pressing worries, no problems, no ill feelings in his spirit, and he got loaded. Why? Was he triggered? No, he didn't have a defense against the first drink. Don't get me started on triggers. I see Peter's head bobbing up and down. It makes my eye twitch a little bit. We won't go down that, right? But they left him alone and said, okay, we'll be here. And he showed back up with an understanding, his own understanding of what it meant to be powerless and unmanageable around alcohol from his own experience. And it's important to let people have their own experiences. Because I tell you this, when you're sponsoring people and they're trying to live off of your experiences, they won't last downrange. They might be willing to go to any lengths for a moment, but when it gets tough, they'll go away. They just will. So I got to let them have their own experience. And sometimes in early sobriety, we laugh about it, about being really gung-ho and trying to drag people through this work and to speak to them as if you know so much about sobriety. And the reality is we're all on the same playing field. You might have a little more time than me or me than you, but I got to tell you, we're just all a bunch of drunks. Every last one of us. And I think it's so funny that we all want to fight to be at the top of the anthill. Like king of the sickies. It's real funny. I don't know. But it warns me against some of that arrogance of insisting that you believe like I believe. It warns me against my arrogance and trying to make you think I know more than you do. Coming to you from a spiritual mountaintop and speaking about things in a way in which you don't understand. And that's not what this program is designed to do. It tells me to use everyday language, right? Because this program is open to any belief system. It just is. So it says I'm not to arouse any prejudice he may have against certain theological terms and conceptions about which he may already be confused. Right? Bill Wilson had a hard time. He struggled with it. As soon as Eddie starts to talk to him about his religious standpoints or his views about spirituality, the hair on the back of his neck stands up and he's remembering all these things from his youth and his childhood, and his agnosticism rises up within him. And at that point, Eddie says, choose your own conception. It's pretty smart because it gives you no loophole. None. It kicks the door wide open. Now you have no excuse. Choose your own conception and move forward. Right? And you're also going to find that there'll be a lot of people that have a lot more knowledge than you do, which is always super interesting to me because they want to tell you all that they know, which I love. I love a spiritual discussion. But at the point in which I'm trying to help you get sober, I don't care what you think you know, because the point is you have a wristband on and you're in treatment. So it doesn't necessarily matter what you know. You know what I mean? I don't mean that from an arrogant standpoint so much, but one of my favorite memories at being at this place in Fort Worth is Low Bottom Treatment Center. It's probably my favorite place ever to go. It's called Pine Street. And there was a guy there was like a panel of people, like 6 of us, that would go out there every Friday night and take a meeting and talk about the steps. And we'd ask for some questions at the end. You know, does anybody have any questions? And you'd be surprised what people don't know. They say, what's a sponsor? You know, just basic information. So it was always real good to get those questions. And this woman had asked a question, and this guy he's detoxing, I'm sure, sitting on the front row, and he's like, I'll take that question. He's gonna, okay, right? You're half drunk, falling out of your chair, but you go ahead and answer that question, boys. Because I love it that the ego of an alcoholic is just so entertaining to me, and I love to see it within myself. I know that sounds funny, but when you are sponsoring people and they call you a 10-step stuff, you can immediately see yourself. And it just makes you laugh. I'm like, oh, that was me 2 days ago, thinking I knew everything about this certain subject, or thinking I could control this situation. I love it. This is another reason working with people is so fun, because they show you who you are. But in dealing with these people that know a lot more about religion and spiritual aspects, what's important and what the book is going to tell me is to remind that person he's an example of the truth that faith alone is insufficient. Right? Because I can believe all day long, but my access to the power I believe in it's not there. Otherwise, I wouldn't continue to drink. And so it's going to go on to say, to be vital, faith must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish, constructive action. There's a whole lot of people that have a hell of a lot more faith than I do, but they can't stay sober. Right? So it's never really been about that. And Margareta read it when she was talking about the 11th step, or the end of the 10th step leading into the 11th step, when she talked about what we really have as a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Now, what does that bring to mind? When we talk about a spiritual condition, most people think, oh, well, that means I need to pray more, or I need to meditate more, I need to be in more union with God. And what the big book is going to talk about when they say maintenance of a spiritual condition is found back in Bill's story. And it's at the bottom of page 14. It says, for if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. It's not at all what I thought it was going to be. But this is how I maintain my spiritual condition. This is in fact how I grow spiritually, through work and self-sacrifice of others. If he did not work, he would surely drink again, and if he drank, he would surely die. Then faith would be dead indeed. With us, it is just like that. It had to be pointed out to me. When you said faith, when you said spiritual condition, I assumed I was going to have to elevate to nun status. Or I was just going to have to be working at a convent and taking people in. They were going to call me Sister Audrey, I guess. I don't know if you get a new name. I don't know how that works. But it was going to be something like that. And it's not. It's on the firing line. It's sponsoring people. It's taking meetings into facilities. It's being of service to my home group. It's me not thinking about me. I tell women I sponsor all the time, take an active interest in somebody else's life other than your own. I don't care what that looks like. And newsflash, they don't have to be alcoholic. Right? You could just be interested in people in general, too. I didn't know that. I was like, how am I going to leave my job and go to a meeting and see if I can help somebody in the middle of the day when I'm being selfish and self-centered? And my sponsor took me back to the book and said, no, it's not just about alcoholics. It says I have to turn my thoughts to others. Sometimes, and Margareta was talking about it earlier, sometimes you just go and help your coworkers. You just go and check on somebody. I tell people, send an email to somebody you hadn't talked to in forever. Ask only about them. Pick up the phone and call somebody that you went to treatment with and check on them. That never dawns on people like me. Oh, I just check on people. I never thought of that. God, the world just revolves around me constantly. I had to be told. Some of you already knew stuff like that. I didn't know. Brand new information. Here's another thing that you're going to encounter is people that don't want to debate or argue with the program of AA or think that they've got a better way, and that's fine. Alcoholics Anonymous, fortunately did not corner the market on God. There are other avenues to get to Him. This is just the way that we find works. The ones of us that have tried everything else couldn't find a solution. This is what we know. This is our path. But it's gonna tell me at the bottom of page 94. It's gonna talk about outlining a program of action. Number one, I'm going to let people know what they're getting into. I'm not going to trick you into getting sober. I'm going to outline what the program of action is going to be, and then we're going to discuss if you're willing to go to any lengths. A lot of times we like to ask people, are you willing to go to any lengths? They don't know what you're talking about. What are any lengths? What do you even mean? Right? It says that I'm going to sit down and have a conversation, make clear that he's not under pressure. If you don't want to do this, it's okay. We're not going to shun you from AA. You're welcome to come back at any point. But it tells me that he's going to rebel at the thought of a drastic house cleaning. Who as a sponsor has run into that? I don't want to do an inventory. Yeah, I get it. And it says that I can essentially not contradict him and say, I felt once as you felt too. I don't know if I would have made the progress I've made if I hadn't done all the work. I have experience in not doing the work and it doesn't go well. My experience with doing the work is that I get sober, recovered, and free. But the choice is yours. And I leave the ball completely in their court. It says on your first visit, tell him about the fellowship of AA, and if he shows interest, lend him your copy of the book. And maybe, they're coming for us. I hear it. It's one of you on the front row, I can tell. They're after you. All right, I'm going to show him what any links look like, and I'm going to lend him a copy of the book. I don't typically lend people my copy of the book, but I'll give them those little mini books, buy them a new book if they need it. God knows I've spent enough money on myself. I can spend some money on somebody else. It's going to go on to talk about on 95 what to do if they're not interested in your solution. And you're going to find this. When you sponsor enough people, you will find that some people don't want the work. They want to do the work, but they want you to lend them money. And they want you to drive them places. And they want you to, right? You become like their taxi service. I fell victim to that a lot in early sobriety because I felt like I couldn't say no. And my sponsor told me the only thing I'm responsible for is taking you through the steps. If you get to the meeting, I'll drive you home. I have a problem in the world with that. Right? If you're doing the work and you're a smoker, I'll buy you a pack of smokes if you're out. I can offer you friendship and fellowship, but my primary responsibility is going to be taking you through the work, and that's it. We're not there to be best friends. In the U.S., we call them besties. I don't know what you call them in Denmark. Right? But that's what we call them. I'm not your bestie. Right? If you want to just get on the phone and gab with a girlfriend, it won't be me. It won't be me. We're going to talk about this and this alone. And it tells me again that I'm to get out of the way. If you're not done, it says that this he may do after he gets hurt some more. I have to drop him until he changes his mind, which means I'm not going to persuade you. Again, alcohol is the great persuader. I'm also not going to have lengthy conversations with you multiple times about doing this work or not doing this work. That's on you. It's not. I didn't grow up essentially with a sponsor who drugged me around. She said, this is what we're doing. You need to do it. You either do it or don't. The end. And I was like, okay, so now I guess this gets to be me. This gets to be my choice. One of the greatest lines in this chapter, it's probably one of my most favorite things. It says, if he is to find God, the desire must come from within. Have you ever taken somebody through the work that was on your heels, wanting to run faster than you can run, so excited about doing this work, and understood without a doubt the desperation of it? There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. And if you spend all your time trying to convince people to get sober, you will be so frustrated. You will be exhausted that you will not have time to work with others. And I always find that when people say, I can't sponsor more than 3 people at once, it's just so exhausting. And I think, what are you doing? What are y'all doing that you're so worn out that you can only sponsor 3 people? You know, and I know there's a lot of controversy about, well, you can't sponsor more than this. I'm not going to get into it with you. And please don't approach me during the break and want to talk about it either. Right? It doesn't matter. You can sponsor as many people as you want, as your schedule will allow. I, on any given time, sponsor about 10 or 12 people. And guess what? They sponsor a ton of people too. And those people call me. And if you're clear and precise about the book, it's real quick. it's not time consuming and you love doing it. But when you've got a handful of knuckleheads, you're trying to drag through the work, it's a beating. And you do this. You see the phone number and you go, right? It's like, shut. And you know good and well you need to let this person mosey on, but you don't because you feel guilty because you're selfish. That's my experience. Well, I don't want to tell this person no. Lovingly tell them no. You don't want to do the work, I love you, bye. The end. Don't make it complicated. It says if he thinks he can do the job in some other way or prefers some other spiritual approach, encourage him to follow his conscience. And I do. I can't tell you how many people I know that have left our fellowship and decided they wanted to get sober in church. Cool. I know a lot of people that have done it and it worked. I don't have an opinion on that. Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't have an opinion on that. It says we encourage you to follow your conscience, which means if you want to do something else, I'm not to tease you about it. I'm not to try to shame you and say, well, let me know how that works, right? Which I've done. Let me be honest. Oh, you want to go to church? Good luck with that. Then a whole bunch of them got sober in church and I had to eat my words. And I deserved it to have judgment about what somebody else needed to do. Do your thing. This is what I know works for me. It says, but at that point, we alcoholics have much in common and that you would like in any case to be friendly. Let it go at that. That's all. The big book is clear and concise on how to do this. And it tells me what to do when they don't want to do this, just like Fred's story on page 96. It tells me what to do when they get ready for it. It says, suppose you're making your second visit to a man. He's read this volume. Notice it says, I'm making my visit, which means I didn't wait for you to show up in the meeting. I went to find you. Just important to know. Right? He has read this volume and says he's prepared to go with the 12 steps of the program of recovery. Having had the experience, you can give him much practical advice. Let him know you're available if he wishes to make a decision and tell the story, but do not insist if he prefers to consult someone else. And that happens too. You carry a message to somebody, I carry a message to Margareta, she appreciates it, we have some conversation, and she decides she wants Thomas to sponsor her. That's fine. That is not about me and it's not about him. It's not. That's God's business. But when we get caught up in this arrogance of, well, I have 10 proteges and you have 12 and Peter's got 30, so Peter's the best. No, Peter's got a lot of free time apparently. I don't know, but that's Peter's business. And it doesn't matter what he's doing, right? Or he speaks here or she does these things. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. My voice and my story is uniquely useful. And it's not for everyone. It's just not. That's why we need everybody in the fellowship to do the work, get on the firing lines, because your story is needed. How many of you didn't think that was true initially? I didn't. I would sit and listen to my sponsor at this little place called Homeward Bound in Dallas, and she would carry the message, and she was so alive and vibrant, and people were drawn to her. It was amazing to watch her, and I thought, well, what am I doing here? You got this. I mean, they all can hear you. I don't know why you need me, and she, doesn't listen to anything I say anyway, but she's very dismissive. She does a lot of that. But she put me in front of these people, and I was horrified. Voice shaking, book shaking in my hands, didn't know what I was doing, but I had been taught what to do, but it scared me to put it all together and to speak in front of these people. And what I found was the people that sat on the edge of their seat when Julie was talking and were very drawn to her and right there with her, understanding, when I got up to speak, they sat back and the other half sat forward. Right? I can reach people that Julie can't. Julie reaches people that I can't touch. That's why all of our voices are needed. Peter can't sponsor everybody. We're going to have to help. Right? That's how you get worn out. I remember somebody saying that at a workshop one time when a gentleman wanted to argue with him about, well, you can't sponsor that many people. And he said, well, if you'd sponsor people, I wouldn't have to sponsor everybody. Yes. And I was like, smart. I love these people. Anyway, I digress. On page 97, it talks about when to help and how to help and when it's helpful and when it's not helpful. Like I talked about before, we are people that want to draw everybody in. We want them to have what we have, but sometimes it's to their detriment when they're not ready yet. It says, helping others is the foundation stone of your recovery. Margareta spoke in detail about the stones earlier. The foundation stone is the bottom line, right? It's what keeps me where I'm supposed to be and allows me to grow spiritually. A kindly act once in a while isn't good enough. Dang, who knew? Right? I did something helpful on Sunday. Check. I'm good for the week. Done? No. Says you may have to act the Good Samaritan every day if need be. Did anybody realize AA was going to be this much work? Is it just me? Every time I turn around, it's action, 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 more action. Don't rest on your laurels. Get up, sit down, pray, meditate. Oh my God. So much going on. And initially, it's a lot. It's overwhelming to think about all this. And here's what's cool about it, though, is you don't have to get it right. You just have to do it. We make mistakes left and right. And recovery is really about course corrections. Right? It's like a guided missile that constantly I get a little off track, we get back on. A little off track, right? But if I don't do those constant course corrections over time, I end up way over here. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Right? It's okay not to know what you're doing all the time. Just keep your feet moving. Keep your nose in the book and keep your feet moving. To the book. You know, there's been quite a few times that we've been given the opportunity to help somebody find Al-Anon or to help them find a better way of life. Because here's the neat thing about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is that it works no matter what you're suffering from. You know, there's so many fellowships that have sprung up. You see people get sober in Heroin Addicts Anonymous, gambling, sex addicts, overeaters. If you have a problem that you can apply the 12 steps to, you can get well and you can get free. That's awesome. In the family members, it's the same boat. They can get free of the need to control the alcoholic and to hang their happiness on whether or not he or she gets sober. I got to tell you, I'm the daughter of 2 alcoholics and sister to a couple of drug addicts. And it's good times. But, you know, I hung my happiness on the rest of them getting well for a long time. And I found myself very unhappy and very high expectations. And there's nothing more miserable than trying to control something that you can't control. Right? It's just a wear out. You know, and there's so many chapters in the book that speaks to the family and what to do and what not to do. Do you ever read that chapter to the wives? Ooh, nothing will open your eyes like reading to the wives, to the family afterward. And you get to see the progression of the illness within the family member and what they go through, the devastation, the heartache. And we just, you know, blow through like a tornado, like, well, I quit drinking, boom, get on board. You know, and they're like, they've been terrorized for years. They don't know what to think, how to feel. There's tons of expectations on what happens when you get sober, when you relapse. I mean, all these things. And it's another reason why it's so important. And it's going to tell me on page 97, though an alcoholic does not respond, there is no reason why you should neglect his family. Oh, he doesn't want to get sober? Done. Next. No, you've got a wife and kids that are in desperate need of some solution. You know, and it's our responsibility to carry this message to them as well. It says, should they accept and practice spiritual principles, there is a much better chance that the head of the family will recover. I got to tell you, I don't know how many people you know that this has happened to, but I know several whose family members came into Al-Anon long before the drunk came to AA. And that's okay. They get to find another way of living, whether he continues to drink or not. That's the freedom that they find. And even though he continues to drink, the family will find life more bearable. Thank God. On page 98, this is another little page that my sponsor lovingly set me down with when I was chasing them all over Dallas, Texas. It says, it's not the matter of giving that's in question, but when and how to give. Because here's the deal. As a sponsor, it's real easy to want to overdo. It's real easy to want to give them all the answers and set them up for the best possible success. And what I had to realize is I'm short-circuiting God's power. Right? I don't know what Margareta needs, but I can tell you that I'm going to push her in the direction of God regardless. Right? If I answer all her questions and give her all my opinions, where is her reliance shifting? Mm-hmm. It's to me. Why is that a problem? Number one, I will fail her, so she can't afford that. Number two, it boosts my ego, and I can't afford that. Makes sense? And you're going to see that. The sponsors that want to treat all their little sponsees or proteges, whatever you want to call them, they're people. All right? There's a big debate about what you call them. Who cares? Right? But it's like a little puppet master. And you're going to do what I say, and you're going to go where I say, and you're going to say what we say, and I'm going to control all. Who are these people that have time for that? I don't know about y'all, but I work. Anybody else have a job? Like a social life and got stuff to do? I don't know. But they're out there. They exist. And to the detriment of the newcomer, right, I learned to place reliance on this human. Now every decision I make is not going to be based on, God, is this what your will is for me? Like the 10-step prayer is about. How can I carry the vision of God's will? It's going to be, is my sponsor going to have something to say about it? And every decision I make is going to be filtered through the delusion that it matters what people think. Right? So just a side note, when you're sponsoring people, you don't have to have all the answers. And that's the good news too. Because that's the fear that some of us struggle with when we're taking somebody through the work. What if they ask this question and I don't know? What if they want to do this and I don't know if it's the right thing? Then push them back to the book, push them back to prayer and meditation, and you don't have to have the answer. I don't know what's best for you, but I know that God does. So why don't we seek that power first? And then we can rely on some of my experience as well. Right? This is two of the best lines in the book. It says, burn the idea into the consciousness of every man that he can get well regardless of anyone. Yeah, but. That's where you're going to hear it. But you don't understand. I'm divorced. Okay. You don't understand I suffer from anxiety and depression. Okay. You don't understand that this is my 14th time trying to get sober. You don't understand I'm only 22 years old. You don't understand I've got abortions and some guilt and shame in my past. You don't understand I've been beaten or I've beaten someone. No, you don't understand what my book just said. Burn the idea into the consciousness of every man, every woman. You can get sober and stay sober regardless of anyone, regardless of anything. So that terminal uniqueness that you really would like to have but you don't have, we're going to have to let go. Right? I'm one of those people too. I wanted to be agnostic. I didn't even know what it meant, but I was like, oh, agnostic, that sounds so rebellious. It just sounds so interesting to me. I wanted to be one of you people because I wanted to be a little bit resistant. Just the dumbest thing ever. Right? But I just wanted to set myself apart a little bit, be a little bit different. There's a guy that I used to listen to speaker tapes a lot in early sobriety. I think I've burned out a CD player listening to so many of them. So many great people. And, he said it was just such a hard day when I had to finally accept that I am a garden variety drunk. That is it. There's nothing amazing, nothing special, no alterations. I'm just a drunk. That's it. And I was like, oh my God, me too. I was like, life altering. It sounds so silly, but it was life changing because I've always had my story. Y'all know what I mean by that? Okay, well, I grew up with parents that are divorced. I grew up with an alcoholic parent. I grew up with this. I had this to deal with. This is part of my past. And it was very dramatic. I probably should have been an actress or something like that. Like I just have a flair for the theatrics because it's all going to be drama. And the reality is we're all the same. So when you're sitting down to sponsor a new man or you're taking a new woman through the steps, whatever their story is not necessarily of a whole lot of relevance. You might connect on some points, and that's very cool when that happens. But the reality is, step one is about two things, choice and control. We are all the same. Dr. Silkworth writes about it, all the different types of alcoholics. But he says that we have one symptom in common. Wow. And it didn't have anything to do with our upbringing, or the color of our skin, or our religious beliefs. Alcoholism is the same for everybody. I love when people want to talk about an alcoholic personality. And I'm like, what? Are you saying, is there a diabetic personality? I don't think so. Right? It's just the disease of alcohol. We all have different personalities. It's not anything to do with that. But as soon as I can keep it to the book and keep it really simple, the newcomer understands that. But when I try to be a big shot sponsor and want to complicate it and use lots of fancy words, who are you impressing here? The guy's detoxing. What are you doing? Right? I have to really check my motive on that. Where is my arrogance today? It talks about This is probably one of the coolest things. We started a group in Dallas called Shoulder to Shoulder, and we took this from my sponsor's favorite part of the book on page 100. It says, both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, not while we're in it, when we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were far better than anything we could have planned. Whose experience is that already? I mean, a whole bunch of you have already experienced that. Follow the dictates of a higher power and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. When I walk shoulder to shoulder with these people, I'm not taking on babies to raise. I'm taking on women to walk shoulder to shoulder with me. Where? To the firing line, where the rest of them are dying. This is not a sorority. It's not a fraternity. I'm not here to be best buddies with all of you. Some of us are going to get real close. And I'll tell you who I'm going to get close to. It's the ones I'm carrying the message with. I like to visit with you in the meetings, but I don't know. People wear me out. But I love alcoholics. Right? And the people I get close to, it's true. People wear me out. And I'm in the hotel industry. I don't know why I'm in service industry. My sponsor makes fun of me. She's like, I think it's funny that God made you work with a whole bunch of people because you don't really like people. I'm like, I don't know. It's odd. But I love alcoholics. And the people that I get close to are the women I sponsor that do the work with me. Right? It's not a fellowship of hanging out. It's a fellowship contained within a program of action. Makes sense? And we'll talk a little bit more about sponsorship and kind of what that looks like to lead each person through the steps here in a little bit. But I think I've gone way over.
Right.
Per usual. Yes, he's in charge. He said right. He's in charge. Down. Done.